Hello.
Hello.
All right. I'm pretty sure it's working. So we're just going to go and go for it.
All right, let's go for him.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tracy Lenz. You've reached the Pecan Tree live stream. We do a Q&A once a week, usually Tuesdays, usually at noon. And, oh, Crystal just left. We have two guests today. Our normal guest, Crystal, who just left. Who, I guess she decided that she knows to go do something. But more importantly, we have Justin Williams here today. He's with Narrow, but I'll let him introduce a little more about his background because he's more than just Narrow. I'm excited to have, first of all, someone other than my brother on on what is this? A podcast vlog? I don't know. Like it's not a vlog. It's not podcast.
Yeah,
Live
right. Well,
stream.
that's live stream, I guess,
Yeah,
That's a buzzword. We can go with live stream.
yeah, live stream. So Justin, I met him at Narrow, and he is on the executive committee or what board? What do they call that? The staff.
Well, I think just staff now, I think they shortened my title, but yeah, I started as a board member with Nero. So I've been kind of all through the organization, and um, many thanks to Matt for getting me involved there.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that our paths didn't cross sooner. Although they might have, and I just didn't realize it. Um, because you're involved with the Mineral Rights podcast, involved with Narrow Colorado. You've been part of Narrow a while now. Like that's, and I feel like we've gone to all the same conferences at least several years now. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're right. I'm sure we've crossed paths many times, but we got the chance. I think it was at the last year at the executive committee meeting
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
that we really got to talking, and been very impressed with what you do.
mm-hmm. Oh, thanks. So the Okay, so we have a couple regulars who have Reeves County minerals. I know that you have a little bit of overlap there, but I'd like to
Mhm.
go into a little bit about your background. And I know that you have a very different background than mine, first of all. Very, yeah, well, we'll just start from the beginning. So your family found out that you had minerals, and that was how you got involved in the mineral situation here.
Exactly. So I started life in business. Thought I was going to own my own business, manage business. That was kind of the trajectory I was on in my career. I was director of sales and marketing, and I was, I guess, in my early 20s when we first found out that there were minerals that were owned. There had always been the family story of who would be my great uncle that was in the mineral world and oil and gas, but nothing had come to fruition until that landman came knocking, which I'm sure happens for many.
Hmm. So what did you believe them when the landman came knocking, or did you know something about it, or was it completely out of the blue, or
It was completely out of the blue, and it actually came to my mom, and she pretty much spent the first 6 to 8 months telling the landman, "No, I don't think I own this. Don't think this is mine."
mm-hmm.
And eventually, the landman, who was very kind, said, "Look, lady, I've done the research. You own this. I need you to sign this pooling agreement so that we can continue with this, and I'll send you a check."
Uh-huh.
And then mom kind of asked some others just because she was confused. This was something that she didn't expect to receive.
Mm-hmm. And did it end up being a good pooling? Like now that you know about all these things, like did you go back and look at see if they were doing a fast one by you, or was it actually a good deal?
No, we were really lucky. The person who purchased it was actually Anadarko at the time, which the Oxy owns the assets, but Anadarko at the time, and they were very thorough, very kind. Everything was straightforward, and um, now that I know more and I've gone back to look at it, it's one of the better ones. So we got really lucky in that first scenario. Now I've
Okay.
made my own mistakes, but thankfully we got lucky to start.
Uh-huh. Okay, good. Um, so a little bit about your I guess your mineral background since that point. You've done a bunch on the education side of things, and you're very involved in it now. Um, Maybe tell me a little bit about the process you went through. Like, did you have any exposure to the oil and gas industry before that? Like, I think you're from West Texas, or was okay, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit about how you got into it, and since then your journey to where you are now?
So really, as funny as it is, it all started with me to a cold call to Matt Sands, who I do the Mineral Rights podcast with, and somehow, some way, I found his information linked to being able to give mineral advice and talk to him. And he was very gracious with his knowledge. He explained what it was, the very basic questions. And I got to know Matt pretty well as I learned, because I felt very silly for not knowing anything about it. And then eventually we started doing the podcast. So it was a really great experience for me to work with Matt and learn from Matt and just become completely immersed. And I think many people find themselves, they've had a career, and then they find this as a whole nother learning curve of something that they have to learn. And that was the case for me. It was very interesting to get into, but a whole lot to take in.
Hmm. Yeah, it's one of the most common things we get is people feeling bad they don't know more about it. I'm like, why would you know more about it unless you have to? Like, this is not something that people research on the weekends for fun, like, unless you have a reason. Yeah.
No, it's funny that checks change everything. It's a
Hmm.
funny thing that happens.
Yeah, yeah. And some of the smartest people that I've run past with have I've gotten the been lucky enough to work with through this job that I have now, and people with these amazing backgrounds and amazing educations, and they're like, oh, I just feel so bad, I just don't know more about it. Or I'm like, no, this is a weird industry where it's hard to learn about it. And even with my background in petroleum, like, once I got onto the mineral side of it, even still trying to figure out all the ins and outs of that angle of it, it's very opaque. It's very difficult to navigate. And I think reaching out to experts like you did, reaching out to Matt, is a really great solution. I might be a little biased with that solution. However, I do think it's a good option. I wish that there were more options out there. But I think that, so how long have you been involved in the Mineral Rights podcast then?
I think we're going on 8 years now,
That's
which
great.
is it's amazing how fast time goes.
Yeah. And how many episodes of that podcast then do y'all have?
I think we've just passed 300.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew it was in the hundreds. So I wasn't sure how many, but it's a slog. That's really dedication.
Consistency. Matt is
Uh-huh.
he's as much a wonderful human as he is very knowledgeable. So he makes it very easy. And just showing up is sometimes the hardest part, and having that other person to keep it accountable
Hmm.
really helps.
Yeah, and y'all have put out so much really good information like for the general owner, and for even people like me who there's like those one-off topics you're like, well, this is something I haven't come across before. I usually end up researching and coming across stuff on the Mineral Rights podcast, like the summaries and the links that are provided. Like, okay, well, there's other stuff people have found. It's a really great resource if you have not been and explored their podcast. I'm guessing anyone who finds this live stream and this replay probably comes across the Mineral Rights podcast, but maybe the YouTube presence versus the Spotify like external presence is a slightly different overlap of people, right?
And I think it's funny because hearing somebody's voice or a podcast is it, though it's you get to know their voice, you don't always connect the face. So it can be like meeting a whole nother person when you actually meet somebody in person that you've done a lot of recordings with. So it's an interesting experience, especially that our events when people, they come up and say, "Oh, I've listened to it." It's just many of them I find, okay, yeah, we've talked before. I've answered your questions, but that in person just makes it click so much deeper and more personal.
Yeah, because I know I've listened to several episodes of the Mineral Rights podcast, but I felt like I just met you the very first time when we met the earlier within the last year or so. So that's just kind of funny how that works. Um,
Absolutely. No, and Tracy, thank you for your involvement in Nero. I'm sure that's a big thing for you to chew with everything you have going on, but I don't think people realize just how much the executive committees really do for the association.
yeah, I am amazed that Matt could fit in. Like, I mean, Jason Fitzgerald, the current president, Matt Sands, prior, Wade Caldwell. These are all professionals that have like full time jobs that have been presidents of Narrow. I'm not president. This is my involvement is like minor compared to what a lot of others are doing. I'm already kind of at my threshold, probably beyond it for anyone waiting on an email. Probably knows that. But okay, I've always had a hard time, and probably just my lack of real thorough involvement up until this year. But I've had a hard time really concisely saying why people should be a part of Narrow and join Narrow and what Narrow provides. Um, could do you have a good like pitch on Narrow that you could share, and then maybe a background for someone who's just hearing about it the first time?
I think what people really don't realize is just how large Narrow is. And so the way the organization is structured is we have our national association, which is a C6, when you have a foundation, which is a C3. But then we also have chapters throughout the United States that are entities of their own that have their own board members. And so as a collection, we have, between 50 and 60 people who are typically highly competent people in minerals. And they bring a lot of education, and they have their finger on the pulse. So that I think that provides so much value, and the size of it is really part of what makes the magic happen. For mineral owners, we provide education. That's one of the primary focuses. Right now, that's in-person conventions, but there's a lot of desire to move towards more on-demand and online delivering of the content. There's also the networking and connections. I think that's been the most valuable part for me and for many people. You meet the other experts like yourself, Tracy. This is the place where we all gather, and there's some really amazing knowledge in the room when it comes to different facets of mineral ownership. And Tracy, something you may know is that mineral ownership kind of it like dips your toe into so many technical areas of the oil and gas industry. But unfortunately, those are all different.
Very different.
Truly. Yeah. And so it really bringing that collection of people together is part of the secret sauce. They also do a lot of advocating. So in the states like Texas, we have folks who advocate for different laws for mineral owners. We approach different associations and work with them on writing legislation or suggesting legislation. We do amicus briefs for the courts, for mineral owners or for interest. So there's a lot that goes on. And I think because we're so large, and we're all kind of doing our own thing and focusing in our own states, we don't have as much communication as we wish we did, but hopefully we'll get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that you're a big part of that communication effort. You're
trying our best. Yes.
Yeah, it was like a light at the end of the tunnel, or of hope for being able to have good communication through the Narrow website. Because I always go there and I'm like, what's happening? I know there's a lot of events, but trying to find them all and trying to find I know there's a lot of resources, but trying to find them in the past has been interesting. And like the Roar newsletter that comes out once a month has a ton of really good information. And I know that you've been really leading the charge to make that easier to search and easier to digest. And because a lot of these topics, it's not something you would read and remember for later unless it's directly applicable at that time. And so, maybe I don't care about water rights today, but then, a year from now, I might care about water rights. And wait, wasn't there a Roar newsletter article about water rights, written by professionals who do this daily? They're really good articles. So it's nice that effort is to archive and make it searchable and findable, and the resource that is already available, more available to the members. You're really doing a great job leading that charge.
Well, thank you. Yeah, they've been around since 1980, so there's no lack of information. It's just trying to capture it all and get into the digital age. One of the wonderful things is the years of experience we have in almost all of our board members. But like you said, everybody's busy as well, and it's a volunteer organization. So all of our boards are full-time volunteers, for better or worse, and we appreciate their service more than we could say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So a lot of our viewers and people who come across this, they're usually typing in Google or typing in YouTube, minerals. What should I know? The very basic, they have a lease in front of them, they have a deed, they heard about something, they got an offer, and they stumble across this type of video as their first video. Hi, if you're here for that, by the way. If you had to go back in time and say the thing that was the most helpful for you to get up the learning curve, what was the thing So we talked about reaching out to experts. Not everybody might have the means to do that. If they're here watching this, they're already working on educating themselves. What helped you the most get to where you felt comfortable with what was happening with your minerals?
The thing I always encourage people to do, and this was the truth for me, it can be very frustrating when you begin because everyone, let's say that you have a division order or you have an operator contacting you and they're wanting to put you into pay status, the well's ready to go. You just want an answer. And many times when you reach out to people, you kind of have to go two steps back and they say, well, you're missing this and this, and maybe that's land work. But as somebody coming in that knows nothing, you don't understand why it is you have to go backwards. So I think I always give people the advice, you're going to go through the same foundational content many, many, many times for different reasons or action points, division orders, or checking something, or is my check stub right? And you learn another layer of the information each time that you do that. And I think when most people struggle, especially initially, is that they try to really hurry to some direct answer. And though you can find an expert who can help you for that, it's not in substitute of trying to learn the two steps back that they're recommending that you go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because really being able to digest what is even being recommended to you, even if you do go to an expert, is part of the process. Because for their own protection, the expert can't really step in and do it for them. I mean, there's a reason because people will take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously mineral managers, and you can assign that authority over to people, but it's your minerals, it's your property, it's your responsibility, and the law really kind of backs that too. And so it is your responsibility to know what you have and know what to do with it, just like if you owned any other type of property. So yeah, that's a good one. Um, so what? On that same topic, I get the question: what can I actually do with this information that is different than if I did nothing? Right? Like, does paying attention actually change anything, or does it just make me feel better about it? Like, have you seen it change anything on your end or on other people's ends?
I I think both sides are a little dangerous. It's funny that you asked this question from the other direction because a lot of times when we hear from folks at Narrow, we actually hear the other side, which is we're telling them to calm down because there might not be as much they can change as they think. So I think both sides are a little scary,
Mm-hmm.
but it really depends on the situation. And I think the thing that everybody can do is get all their documents in place because when questions come up, not if, you have what you need to have the right conversation. So it's a hard one to answer. There are many situations, as you know, Tracy, that you can't change what's happening. I have several properties where those leases were signed in the 40s or 50s, and those are held by production and have been. So there's not a whole lot I can do. But in other situations, like signing a lease, that is a decision where you are in the driver's seat. You do get to make a really important decision, and it's worth researching it because that'll impact somebody down the line that can't make the decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I always like to advocate that everyone's going to have a bias towards that answer or that question or anything that they're telling you, and to first know the person's bias, because I have a bias, you have a bias, that the operator has a bias, and there's a lot of mineral managers might say, oh, you definitely need to do something, and I'm going to do it all for you, and I'm going to make you all this money. Or the operator might say, oh no, you don't, it's going to happen whether or not you agree to it or not. You might as well sign the paper. It's like you might get a whole bunch of different stories, and it really is about like walking that line in between knowing what makes a difference and knowing what doesn't, and you have to know the things to know that. And so it is difficult to answer, but I always err on the side of more knowledge is better. So that's why I say, okay, at a default, be involved and be aware. But yes, maybe don't get, I do see people get a little too worried sometimes over things that it's okay. It's not going anywhere. It's been there a while. It's been in the ground for a while. It's not leaving or, getting up and moving without you knowing. I guess theoretically could, but not on its own. Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, there's a lot of fluster, but I think that comes with any situation where you don't know what you don't know. So,
And one of the common things I see as well is often the operators, and especially the division order analysts, they get a bad rap. We think that we need to be protected from them, but quite often they're there to help you, and they
mhm,
really want to answer your questions. And you hear the horror stories, right? I've contacted them a million times, and there are those situations, but more often than not, especially if they're asking for you to take an action like send a division order, they're there to help you. Their job is to get you into pay status, and they want to answer your questions.
mhm.
So I think it's a common misconception that you can't ask questions or ask for explanations or ask them about options because they're there to help you, and you're not the only person that's asking them. And they may be the most informed person on that particular document or well or what's going on at that time.
Yeah, the division order analysts are need to be your best friend because that's probably the only person you're going to have access to at that company.
And I made the mistake one time of not making friends with the division order analyst, and it was not in my favor at all. So it's certainly worth it to work with them. And most are
Yeah.
very, very kind.
Yeah. And coming from the operator side, I have a lot of like really good friends who are on the division order and title side, and man, the horror story. There's some really funny stories also. There's a lot of characters out there in the world. But yeah, man, people can be mean, and I get it. It's a really frustrating process, and I especially seeing it from both sides. Like I get it. But just to know that both sides are probably don't have enough information, don't have enough resources, um, or aren't given enough resources. The operators definitely have more resources more often, but that individual that you're talking to that has the ability to give you the information, just say please and thank you at least.
Yes, yes, right. Yeah, and if you have questions, ask them. Don't
Uh
be
huh.
afraid.
Uh huh. Yeah, and there's so much good information that they are able to tell you, but they don't have to. They aren't required to share a lot of information with you. But they have so much at their fingertips that if you're nice to them, they could.
Yeah, yeah, and you might be the rare occasion that day where somebody was nice because, like you said, there's a lot of horror stories, and
Hmm.
it can be a hard job for them.
Yeah, because I know that when I was a reservoir engineer for a company drilling wells, we would get the random questions sent our way from our title and land department from an owner who was just curious on what our plans for a workover was, and I was not required to tell them what our plan. And I think even the company probably would prefer us not to tell them what our plans for the workover was. And then our land department would also be very cautious on how we worded stuff back. But if we had time, we would share what we were planning on doing. But it was definitely a chain to get all the way into the company to someone like me who knew what the plans were for that well. Um, so you do see the recommendations to ask why that well is down, ask why that well is shut in, or if they have plans for workover. I'm like, they might be able to give that information to you. It's worth asking for sure, but yeah, it is a long tedious road to get to that answer.
And polite persistence, it can
Mhm.
be really be a good tool when it comes to that.
Mhm. Yeah. So let's see. Um, the CMM program. Okay, so the Certified Mineral Manager program that Narrow has. Let's chat on that because I myself am not a CMM, but I have taken the first exam, so I started the process. Um, it's like a full if you see someone with the CMM like initials after their name. Like maybe you could probably better explain what it means, what they went through to get that, um, and how Narrow like manages that.
Mhm. I think probably the best way to kind of discuss it is actually talk about who some of the CMMs are, who some of our major groups are. We have a lot of folks who work in the banking industry, and maybe they manage minerals owned by the bank, but they're acting as a mineral owner and trying to make informed decisions about the asset. I think that kind of sums it up. It certainly isn't a technical engineering type thing, but it is learning about how to understand your property, what it is that you owned, where the information comes from, how to double check the documents you're going to receive, and how to understand and calculate exactly what you own and deal with interactions or typical interactions with operators.
Hmm.
So it's a great program from somebody, let's say that maybe they manage their family minerals and they want to go through a process of getting all of that education that they need to feel certain in their ability to know the fundamentals of calculating that revenue interest, finding their legal descriptions, understanding the exact amount they own and the different ways that that might be, the type of interest they own. Is it an override? Is it a non-participating royalty interest? So it starts at a pretty high level and then really gets down into the weeds of the different aspects, which, Tracy, with your education, you certainly went through even deeper than what we're offering. But, this is really intended for people to be able to go through the process kind of self-serve, and to be a foundation on top of their education rather than being the whole focus of an education, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know I have engineering degrees, but the education that is required to do some of this, the mineral management. So CMM is Certified Mineral Manager, if we didn't say that. But the things that go into calculating a decimal were not the things that I learned in college, like ever.
Oh,
Hey, Martha.
interesting.
Oh, so I will point out, Martha, Mary, Alice, y'all are all being very quiet today, and I will let you know that Justin's very nice.
Question, please, hit me
you
with
don't have
them.
to be you don't have to be worried about it. Um, but yeah, so Martha says managing minerals as an NPRI NEMI. I assume we don't do any managing. Justin, are you familiar with those situations of the non-executive and non-participating mineral owner situations?
So yes, to a degree, there's not a whole lot that you can do. However, I find it interesting to kind of understand who is it that actually has the executive rights for the minerals. I had a case actually where I was closer into contact with that person than I had realized through their heirs. So you may be surprised to find out that you're closer to these people than you realize, and um, there's no reason that you can't get to know them, talk to them, let them know that you have a non-participating interest into the same property that they do. It was a really interesting conversation in my situation.
Hmm. Yeah, because knowing more about what their goals and their, how closely they're paying attention to it, really helps guide what you should be paying attention to as kind of the beneficiary of that situation. Oh, you've met them. That's good. I was curious, Martha, how if you were related to them or if it just happened to be uh, other people who now have the executive rights. So Martha and them have a couple people here have interests in West Virginia. That's um, their background here.
Oh,
We've
and
dug a couple times into what like where their minerals are. It's kind of fun to see across the country the different areas and locations that the people have just all the backstories as to how people get the interests across. Like, how did you get something there? And like, well, my dad was a dentist, and then like, it just
there's
it's
always a story. It's fascinating. Yeah.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
not related. Met them on our trip to West Virginia. Oh, fun. That's. I'm glad that you could schedule that. I didn't see. Is Mary here today also, or just Martha? I'm looking back at the earlier chat. Oh, I do see Mary. Okay, I see Mary. All right. Um, sorry. Whenever the chat starts before I get the official system going, I miss some of the early end of the chat that happens.
Oh.
Uh, yeah. So the CMM thing, just going back to that, I like that it's a way that you can feel like, especially if you're the one in charge of managing your family's minerals, you are given the tools necessary in order to do it appropriately. So whether or not you're doing it professionally or non-professionally, as you might consider yourself as just a family person, um, the the tools are the same and the requirements are often the same. And often, if you're not doing it professionally, you probably care about it more than some of the professionals care about it. Unfortunately, I mean, I think we've all worked with a wide variety of people who care about their jobs more and less than others. So I have not met anything other than some of the best people in the CMM program. But it's nice that there is at least a guiding, I guess, course that you could take. Because some people really do lean towards, give me a course, give me a book. I want to learn all I can. I know I lean that way. I think I probably attract the same people to my audience that also lean that way. But the CMM program really does. It was significantly difficult the first time I went through the questions. Like it's not intuitive things that you would just naturally pick up. So if you know how to do the tests and the questions on the CMM exams, it does mean that you've gone through the process of not like becoming knowledgeable about division orders and how title is divided and how wells hit the reservoir and how that even works in general.
And it's interesting. A lot of mineral owners, when they start out, title is one of the first places you get sent. You speak to an attorney. The attorney says, "Yes, we can do this kind of thing, but I need to see a chain of title so I can understand what we're actually transferring." And I think the first way of understanding for me, at least, was okay, I can get these documents. I see who gave this to who, but understanding what was actually transferred and what happened with how those interests got split, and then how do I calculate this document I'm receiving today from the operator is a really big gap, and that the CMM program fills that gap and
Mm-hmm.
really takes you through understanding, even some of the oddest scenarios that you can run into. But like you said, I think it's surprisingly hard for folks when they get into it because it is pretty rigorous and it goes through all the math and the fundamentals and how it's calculated and how it transfers and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's my biggest recommendation. That if you do have a lot of new wells happening on your land, if there's no other thing that you decide to pay for, I think that course, even if you don't end up becoming a certified mineral manager, even just taking the course, getting the book, hearing the methodologies and the training, even if you don't take the exam, I think that's probably one of the better uses of time and money that you could do if you're going to have to be the one that's analyzing that. What do you would you agree with that or not agree or?
No, I completely agree. And there is also the Foundations of Mineral Ownership course, which we offer. And I think that that one is tailored to really kind of get your head spinning that first time and going over all the main topics. But it doesn't necessarily go into the weeds of how you would apply the knowledge to certain scenarios in the minerals you're managing. So I think it really depends where you are in the journey. Um, the other thing with the CMM and RMM program, the intent is you have to recertify every 5 years. So we're really trying our best to ensure that you're up to date. One of the things you hear people talk about the most are lease terms that have changed. Lithium right now is the thing everyone's talking about. Oh, be sure that there's something within your leases that pertains to lithium. And our hope is to ensure that people are getting those updates and staying up to date on the things that are changing. But I know the first time I ever went to a Nero event, I sat there and I was just a bit glazed over. I didn't really understand what was being presented because some of it can be very high level. And though you walk away from those courses with a bit more understanding to be able to take in the really high level presentations and understand what it means for you and your minerals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I had when we had so back in 2024 we hired. That was when we did our big hiring push. We went from just me and Jason to where we hired Becca, Whitney, Kelly, and JD, and we had at least half of them, if not all of them, attend. I can't remember who attended now, but I know at least half of them attended the foundations course
Mhm.
because and these were like petroleum engineers. so Whitney and Becker are petroleum engineers. Kelly worked for Colleen Gillespie, which is a appraisal group for I think 8 to 10 years. Like these are people who are familiar with oil and gas. They felt they needed to take it because we just don't get that exposure to the mineral owner side of it when you're on the operator side. And so although we know all the ins and outs of how the operators are seeing it and how the operators are valuing it and how the formal methodology to do it, I think that more industry professionals should have exposure to it. Um, but that was definitely one of the first things. I was like, you need to go to at least one of the conferences to see what is out there and get connected to some of the networks and who the other mineral owners are and who we're working with. But second, there's some good courses that are held along with the conferences. Okay, let's see. We have a comment. Hello, I've crossed your channel a few years ago, and it's good to see the growth and added value and knowledge. Job well done. Thank you so much. That's so sweet. Really appreciate that comment. Okay.
It takes a lot to stay consistent. I think one of the funny things about minerals is there's a lot to talk about, but also it's the same thing that we're talking about over and over, maybe in different flavors. And so 300 episodes of the podcast can be really hard to keep it interesting. And hats off to you, Tracy, to keep staying consistent on this. That's a hard thing to.
I think we're only on episode, I think, like 48 of the live stream. But yeah, one thing I've found is that a lot of times people who know a lot about a topic don't realize that they know a lot about a topic, if that makes sense. And sometimes something that seems obvious to one person is not obvious to the people who aren't in it every day and all the time. And then everybody learns so many different ways that explaining things a different way or having the question formed, or maybe they just were in a different headspace when they heard it one time versus the other, or you had weird music playing the first time, or the live stream crashed out halfway through. I have a lot of technical difficulties on this. This is the best, knock on wood, that it's gone so far.
Knock on wood too.
Knock on wood. I have my wooden desk in front of me. I made sure to knock on before. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that can affect how people learn and how people pick things up. And it really, for anyone who's watching this that feels like it took 18 times in order for it to get through your skull, I feel like I'm a pretty smart individual, and there's been so many topics that I've had explained to me so many different ways from so many different people. Hedging was one. so future hedging. There's let's see. Oh, there's a lot of examples of topics where, okay, I'll get this one really quickly, and then this particular topic, it takes 18 different times, 18 different ways from 18 different teachers for me to finally click on that topic. So no one watching this, if you're in that boat, you are fine. You're exactly what you should be doing right now, is just continuing to absorb and get familiar with the language. When your mind is more relaxed, you learn more anyway. So I think that these type of situations where you're just kind of casually picking the stuff up as you go is probably a good strategy for most people, which is why I continue doing this, because first of all, I really like making the videos, but I just, as you know, we all run out of time. And so this way it's on the schedule, it's going to happen. But, and then I also get to hear directly from people. Let's see. Alice Hooten. So, Justin, if you're not aware, Alice Hooten is my mother. So she is our biggest supporter. So back in 2022, I think, might have been 2021. I think it was 2021. Alice, mom, went to the first Narrow convention with me, and just to get a little personal. Hopefully, she doesn't mind. It was maybe 4 months after my dad passed away, so it was kind of 2021. So it was a way to get first out of the house around other people, but I was a little hesitant because I hadn't been to one before either, because the 2020 convention was I think it was in Austin, but that was its whole thing because it was 2020. And then so I didn't go to that one, and so 2021 was the first one I'd been to. And the people there, if you enjoy going to a bingo game and just chit-chatting around a cup of coffee, that's the type of vibe of Narrow. Some other industry events definitely don't have that vibe. They're much more industry oriented, catering to the industry themselves, like the mineral buyers and service providers. this is more catering towards the actual owners, which statistically is more the 65 plus age range, much more laid back, much more we're going to make sure to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner type of situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody's so sweet there. And so it was a really good um, it was a really good environment, good response, and this is which is why I went back the next year and the next year, and why we continued to get more involved.
It's a wonderful group of people that have a lot of knowledge, and there's a lot of value in the experiences that can be exchanged. So it's a really wonderful thing. I always meet new people and hear new stories, and everyone has a story of how they acquired their minerals, like you said. So it's
Hmm.
great.
Okay, so JJJ, hello, has a question. As part of an AFE, would the drilling company provide their estimate of production slash output curve? So for background, AFE is Authority for Expenditure. I I've never provided, when I was providing AFEs to people, I never provided our curve. I was instructed not to provide our curve, and I've not seen other people provide curves or expectations. I think the most that we've ever provided, and that was if we really wanted someone, this is back when I was on the operator side, the most we've ever provided was we would say the rate of return that we expected this well to have if we wanted them to, and we would kind of choose what we included based on if we wanted them to participate or if we didn't want them to participate. Um, so the answer is probably not. But Justin, have you seen any AFEs that include any information other than the amount that they want to spend?
No, no, that's usually all you're going to receive. Now, you certainly can on your side work with somebody, an engineer who can do that kind of analysis of the well. But I've not seen a situation where they're actually giving you that information. Though I've not specifically asked. But
Hmm.
like you say, I imagine it's very expensive information to obtain, and not something they really want to share a whole lot.
Yeah, and just know, like based on what I said, it's probably based on if they want you to participate or not. So if they want you to participate and they're giving you information on like, oh, look how good it is, they it probably there's probably a reason that they're not wanting as much interest in that well, because if you don't participate, then they carry it, and which means that they have more interest in the well, which means they get more of the money if it's a good well. So if they don't want you to participate, if they are leaning towards no, 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 you have to figure it out on your own, like we're not sharing our homework, then it probably means that it's a good well, or they could just be EOG and they don't want to tell anyone anything. Like there's some companies that are very like secretive because they're the smartest people in the rooms, but that's generally what I would also expect. I guess this is the moment that my team would tell me to plug that we do have an AFE analysis tool being added into our platform, and we do have AFE like in any part of the country. If you go in, um, I guess this is my segment, my sponsored segment, sponsored by Pecountry. um, we have type curves across the country, so we have the rate of return and the EURs expected for an average well in that area. So then you can compare, like just from a baseline portfolio without having to pay an engineer to do any type of analysis. You can look at your AFE that you're presented, and let's say that they expect it to be an $8 million well. That's a 10,000 foot lateral. You can compare versus our economics and say, well, theirs was a 10,000 foot lateral, but their expectation for the cost of the well is a little higher or lower, so the returns might be a little higher or lower. So you can do that type of analysis, or you could. We also have consulting services, so we do anything from engineer on call, hourly, consulting to full. We do a managed portfolio is probably the most extreme, or full appraisals, full consultations. So we run the gambit. But that is my oh, and also like and subscribe. I'm supposed to say that too.
Well, while we're
It
talking
helps get
about
the video out to more people. Yeah.
it,
All
yeah,
right. Any other checklist of things?
yeah. And it's a return on investment from the mineral owner's perspective. If you're talking about investing a lot of money in the AFE, it's worth doing your research to see what kind of risk you're taking and to understand that. But not always is it a good return on investment with minerals. That's something the mineral owner has to decide.
Yeah, and especially when you're talking on the AFE side of it, that means that you're a potential working interest owner. And anytime a working interest owner means that you're exposed to the costs related to operating that well, plugging that well, drilling that well. And if you've stumbled across this video because you're looking from other investment topics, such as maybe you're coming from real estate, or you've heard that minerals were a good investment, or maybe you're thinking of buying wells, just know that the working interest side of things does expand the complexity quite significantly, because you're not just dealing with the income side of minerals as a mineral owner would. You're dealing with all of the OPEX and the fees that are charged, the G&A overhead that is charged to the non-operated working interest owners. You're dealing with all the taxes that you get to, both beneficial and negative taxes involved with working interest owners. Like, it just know that it does expand quite a bit of complexity, and know what you're getting into. That's my number one recommendation for anyone getting into working interest, which is what an AFE implies. So that's
Yeah.
my TED talk on working interest.
Yeah, it's a common question you hear, and not to say that it's not something that people do, but it can be a big decision for somebody who's maybe only having exposure from a lease or overriding royalty interest or other inherited interests like that.
Hmm. So I did stumble across one topic which I've personally had questions on, and that was the topic of co-tenancy, unleased co-tenancy. And
Hmm.
I made sure to send this one to you ahead of time just to make sure, just because I know theoretically what happens, and I know it's based on what state you're in. When, if you are a mineral owner and you don't agree to lease to a company, what happens? Because they can go ahead and drill the well anyway. And but the what happens after that, and I get that question quite a bit, is, well, but what are the downsides if I say no? Should I say, like, could you expand a little bit about that? And maybe.
So it can really be state specific. So let me start with that. And unleased co-tenant typically is a conversation that comes from a situation specifically in Texas. So in many other states, they'll pool you, and often that will go to a judge, and they'll force pool you. You'll have a statutory pooling limit. But in Texas, there's a different way that they can do it. So an unleased co-tenant is a situation where they have leased up their tract, they have decided to drill, but you're into the percentage that they have not shored up. So let's say that they found 80% of the owners or 80% of the interest, got the owner signed for that. You can be in that remaining amount, and essentially they carry your interest, and you become an unleased co-tenant, with the concept being that once the well reaches payout, your proportionate share of the cost, then you start to receive royalty checks in that situation. It can be a difficult spot for mineral owners, especially if you have an operator who's not willing to give you a lot of information, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. And in my case, it was actually because there was a title defect that was there. And so we had to go correct the title defect, but then at that point, it had been leased up otherwise, if that makes sense.
Mhm. And essentially, you're in the situation of, you kind of could have had an AFE because you were an unleased mineral owner. So that means that you had full exposure to the cost of the well. And then you didn't participate, so you didn't pay up your money to participate in the well. And so then that's what you're saying, where you have that gap in, kind of penalty time for not participating. And then eventually you don't lose your interest by not participating, you just have a penalty. And usually it's like 300% payout or
Mhm.
something. Later you get back into the well and start receiving your share of interest, but you also still have to pay your percentage then of your working interest owner then.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
You're a working interest owner. Yep. And you have to pay your proportional share plus the penalty of whatever your proportionate share cost to drill. The difficult thing for me in my situation was trying to find out when a well paid out.
Mm-hmm.
What was the cost of that well? When would that be paid back? The answer was often, and that's just from a couple different operators actually, that they would have to get that information from the accounting firms in a different country or different place. So it was something that the division order analyst just really wasn't really in tune to.
Mm-hmm. No, the payouts were a headache even internally. Just know that within that same company, there is somebody having a headache over not knowing the payout for that well.
Yes,
And it is
absolutely.
probably the person in the reserves category. Because every time when that well pays out, the interest for that operator changes too, and the reserves for the operator. And so, especially if that company is a publicly reported company, that is something that's being audited. Is what interest that company has before and after payout, and then being able to model when that payout happens. And so that was one of my big jobs at the company I was working for, was being able to predict the future revenue and future expenses. And part of that is knowing when all these different payouts happen, because there's a lot of different reasons that you can have a payout. It could be that it's a deal structure with another operator that was, maybe it's a farm out, maybe it's a drill co, maybe it's a back end from an operator that didn't want to participate on wells and the offsetting acreage. But a lot of times it is just a mineral owner who either they couldn't be found or didn't feel like leasing or couldn't reach an agreement with. But yeah, this was after the fact. So after it had been drilled, and after things had been leased, could you have gone back and gotten it leased, or was it past the point where they were?
Yes, we could have signed a lease with them. It was absolutely an option, and I delayed it for quite a while, but did ultimately end up signing a lease with the operator. Just because it became pretty apparent that getting that payout information was going to be very difficult, and so it was a return on investment. Are we ever going to get this information? Do we run the chance of never being paid on this? And so we opted to sign a lease.
Mm-hmm. And was these minerals in areas where they could drill another well, or?
Yes, yeah. It was an area where it actually sold to another operator. They went in and they actually drilled 3 or 4 more wells from that same pad.
Okay. Yeah, because that's generally, there's a couple times I've run across people who had the option to be leased, and I'm like, actually, I wouldn't lease. You're kind of past the point where like payouts happened. Like, don't lease? Like, you're already gonna get more pay. Like, I don't know. But yeah, if there's new drilling coming, if there's a question on payout, like when that's going to happen, I think those are all good times to go ahead and sign a lease, especially if you weren't intentionally becoming a working interest owner. If you didn't
Yeah.
seek out to become a working interest owner.
Yes, and to kind of connect, I think I was not as friendly as I should have been to my original division order analyst when we started in this scenario, and I may have had an earlier chance to lease or been explained to me better that how good of an option that would have been for me. But again, I wasn't very kind to my division order analyst, and I don't think they really went into too much depth of trying to help me. But I learned that lesson quickly. So.
And the best option was for you to lease to the operator, or were there any third parties that offered to lease, like as a
I
like a?
We had a few third parties that offered to lease, and then it became pretty clear that the operator was pretty much going to top anything that we were getting third party. But we did absolutely go talk to several other people, then go back to the operators and say, "Hey, can you match this?" And they continued to do so. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah, because that's also another question I get is especially if people get approached by an external landman who's trying to kind of, not, I mean, I say opportunistically in a good way almost in this way, like it's business. They're trying to make a business decision to get in at the best time. But if they find wells that are about to pay out and that interest is about to have a better deal, they might try to come in and lease that interest from those unleased mineral owners. But yeah, I generally think that the operator should be the one that's wanting more interest in the well, especially if it's a well that you would want more interest in. So,
And sometimes I've noticed too that lease terms can sometimes be a decider. So maybe the bonus is the same, maybe the royalty rate's the same, but maybe a third party is more willing to deal with some specific lease terms that you're looking for
that's
versus
true. That's true.
if it's a really a large operator, they can be rather rigid.
Yeah, the larger the operator, you might have more flexibility on some aspects, but they typically have their own terms that they don't want to deviate for because they've nailed those down. Then they don't want to have to deal with 18 different terms on the same well.
You nailed it. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
But no, it was a good experience. I learned a ton, and I would say that situation really made me have to learn a lot more than maybe just going through a lease situation at that time. So I was thankful for it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, being exposed to that is kind of you're exposed to the all the products all at once if you're an unleased co-tenant because you have all the working interest, the mineral side, the leasing side, the all of them.
Yes.
Um, let's see. Have you ever gone through and like sold any minerals or bought any minerals? Have you been through that process any?
I've purchased other minerals, so I've repurchased some of the minerals that I inherited from other family members, and then I've also purchased some privately in a couple situations as well. I've not sold any though.
Okay. We have people who approach us wanting to buy out a family member or something like that. Do you have any best practices? I know we're coming up to the end of the hour, but any best practices on that aspect of it?
What was important for me, or what I thought would be important, would be to have a third party person that could help to give us some kind of value for the property. That way, it was especially being family. We didn't want to create any tension. We wanted everybody to feel good about it, and having that third party to help mediate and value, put a value to it was very helpful.
Hmm. I promise I didn't stage that question. I didn't know his response before I said that. But
No,
I do agree. I do agree. I think that that's one of the better uses of other than saving on taxes and being knowledgeable. But we're happy to be that third party mediator, and I think that that does make for a really good. It's kind of like having a wedding planner. Like you have someone to blame. You have someone to say like, well, they said that.
exactly. And,
Maybe I
and
was
I,
the
I
only one
will
that
say,
had that wedding planner experience.
you guys are doing a really fantastic job of kind of filling the space of making that more cost effective for mineral owners, because having a traditional evaluation is something that oil companies are used to doing, but it comes with an oil company price tag too.
Yeah, and there's different levels that you can get. Also, there's like the full kit and caboodle, turn every stone type of appraisal. But for a lot of people, if you're not needing it for to maximize tax savings or something, or you're not selling a multi-million dollar asset, it's more of just okay, what is the ballpark, and is there an expert to sign off on that? And that's what there's different levels and different ranges on what these things can cost. And so, while a deep dive appraisal can be in the thousands plus, there's a range that we can fit almost any budget we can fit into. But yeah,
Well,
thank you
thank
for
you,
that.
Tracy, for inviting me. It's been wonderful to be here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. So you're in Colorado. We probably should have like covered that originally, but right, you're based in Colorado, right?
I am. I'm in Colorado Springs. Yeah, so about an hour from Denver.
Okay, great. And do you have anything you would like to plug? Here, you have the floor for a minute or two. If there's anything you'd like to promote or plug, or any upcoming events, or anything you'd like to share.
Yeah, the thing I'd love to say is if for mineral owners, if you have assets, I would encourage you to attend a convention with the National Association of Royalty Owners with NARO. That in-person event is a completely different perspective than you might see online or in any other way. So those that haven't done that or haven't networked in that way, it's really worth it to get that experience at least once.
Great. All right. Well, Crystal decided not to join us the rest of the time, but
We'll forgive Crystal this
we'll
time.
forgive her. It's a nice day outside here, so I'm sure she's laying in the sun or something. So, Martha, I did see your question. Um, we do pay working interest. Are you saying we shouldn't be? I didn't want to ignore it. If you're paying working interest as the two types of interest owners that you'd meant, the NPRI and NEMI, it might be that it's a post production cost that you're seeing if there's an expense coming out of your check stub, or there could be something else. But I would be interested to see what brings you to say that you're paying working interest. Um, because working interest specifically is you usually get a joint interest billing statement separate from the revenue
Mhm.
statement, and that would be where you'd see the well and how much they paid, and like this pumper fixed their truck this day and they bought coffee this day. I mean, not that detailed sometimes, but electrical on the well and a workover, and cost to drill the well. Those type of things would be the working interest expenses. A lot of mineral owners do have to pay things like pipeline fees and transportation and marketing. Those are typically bucketed into post-production costs. And there's also taxes that everyone typically has to pay. I don't know anyone that hasn't had to pay taxes in some form on their income. So you should see some type of things being deducted. But if it's other than that, let me know. You can send me an email. We can look into it. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Justin. It's great having you on. We'll love to have you on again sometime. But we'll work on scheduling that. Let's see. Oh, Alice says, agree the narrow convention is an excellent place to go learn more about. You'll find people with the same questions and problems. Yes, I agree. Well, thanks again for joining us. And thanks. And we'll see you soon. And for y'all regulars, or if you just stumble across us, we'll be here again next week at Tuesday at noon Central Time. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. I did see some comments from other episodes I will try to get to in like chat reply later on. And you can also email me things. I did see the email from earlier. I will respond to that email. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Justin, for joining us again. And we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah, have a good day, everyone.
All right. Bye.